Hi everyone, good afternoon, evening. My name is Daniel Feidelberg. I was a full-time MBA, graduated a couple years ago now, so 2018. I work at BD right now, so I'm a senior product manager on the Pyxis solution. So it's all end-to-end medication management, and I'm all on the upstream marketing side of the house. So looking at what's in the market today, and then helping develop the future roadmap strategy. Prior to BD, I was at Nuvasive, which is a spine surgery company, all within product management. And that was all working in spine technologies to enable implants for procedures. So happy to be here and talk to you all, and feel free to ask questions as we go through it.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. Jasmine, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jasmine. I'm at Scripps Research now as a senior marketing project manager. Specifically, I'm working on a research program called the All of Us Research Program, which is funded by the NIH, and it's the largest health research program of its kind. Our main goal within our team is to recruit participants who are underrepresented in biomedical research. And prior to Scripps, I think I've done a lot of things all over the place. I've been in tech, real estate, but always stayed within the marketing function. And I'm super excited to chat with all of you today.
Thank you very much. Coffey, you're next.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Coffey Zhang. I'm currently working at Edwards Lifesciences. For those of you who are not familiar with Edwards, we are a global leader in medical device innovations, specifically in structural heart diseases, critical care, and surgical monitoring. And our slogan is helping patients is life's work, so life is now. That's where our culture is centered around, our activities are centered around patients. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently a senior analyst working at sales operations and strategy in our critical care business units. So my main responsibilities including sales reporting, sales forecast, sales analysis. I also build dashboards, maintain systems as well as databases, etc. And then prior to joining Edwards, I have a couple of years working experience in IT consulting. I grew from a functional consultant to a service delivery manager, and I oversaw cross-functional teams on Oracle system implementations. And then I got my MBA from UC Davis in 2019, and I got my Master of Science in Business Analytics at Rady. So very excited to meet all of you, and then happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. And Justin, batting cleanup, introduce yourself, please.
Hey everyone, my name is Justin Nguyen. I currently work in product management at Illumina. If you are familiar with Illumina, they're known for DNA sequencing, and I work within the sequencing products. So I work on their flagship product called NovaSeq, the NovaSeq 6000, which is their current kind of bread and butter right now, along with other sequencing instruments. There's a lot more that goes into it. So there's like analytics, there's also library prep, so different functions that, but for me, I'm in the sequencing product management. But before this, I worked at BD as well under in the Pyxis enterprise solution. So I didn't work with Daniel, but I was there before Daniel joined. So, but before going into life sciences, biotech, I was in the tech industry for a little bit, working on the cloud and such. So a bit of a pivot for me.
Thank you for that. All right. So my first question that I want to ask the panelists is about what sort of everyday abilities and skills do you use in your job, and what out of those abilities and skills do you find most successful in your roles? And I'm going to have Coffey start us off, please. Oh, Coffey, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're still on mute. There you go.
Okay. My screen actually just disappeared all of a sudden, so I was trying to find the unmute button. Alrighty, so so I always consider myself a data profession in the medical device industry or healthcare industry. So from my standpoint, I feel like there are a couple skills that are really important to succeed in this role. Specifically, I feel like the first is analytical skills, because from my perspective, my main goal is to support sales operation strategy leadership, the sales team leadership, to help them make more informed decisions, whether about making commissions plan, commissions execution, or sometimes even influence product strategy or sales performances. Someone who is able to understand the business, connecting the dots, and make recommendations will be really important. The second is, of course, technical proficiency. Of course, I cannot speak to every single data profession out there, but just from my own perspective, I use macros, Visual Basic on a daily basis. I manage SQL Server. I use SQL queries to retrieve data, manipulate data. I also build dashboards. So if you know about self-service business intelligence tools such as Qlik, Power BI, or Tableau, that's going to be really helpful. Another thing I do is to manage the database and design the database. So if you know about our DBMS, or if you have experience executing, designing, implementing relationship database, that's going to be a huge plus as well. In addition to the first two, I will probably quick go through the last one, or the last two maybe, is excellent written, verbal, and visual communication skills, because a lot of times you need to present information in a very clear and concise manner, and then you will be dealing with people from all over the organization. It's very important to be able to present the data, present your recommendations very clearly. And lastly, I will say, because I deal with file drills on a daily basis, when people want data, they send you data requests, they want it right away. So be able to understand your priorities and manage multiple projects and multiple project timelines is also critical to succeed in this role.
Excellent, thank you for that. Justin, how about for you? What skills and abilities do you use in your role every day, and what do you find are the most useful?
For the hard skills, I'd probably say like the things you probably already have experience with, just basically the Microsoft suite. So we do a lot of presentations in marketing and product management, especially on our like quarterly business reviews and such. So being able to present to the executives, or also being able to explain your business also to like, you're going to have a lot of different demographics and different audiences. So being able just to kind of communicate effectively across everyone that has a different mindset is one of the things that I would say is pretty important. Assuming the Coffey, the analytics part of it is pretty important, because you have to know your customers, learn their trends, understand their trends, and also forecast their trends and what you expect and they be purchasing or buying in the next coming quarters or next year, et cetera. So she mentioned Tableau. Tableau is a huge part of Illumina and something that I use daily. We're working we're spinning up like an analytics team just for Tableau. So if you have any experience in that, or any type of analytics, that's a good program to get used to. And also another important one is probably networking. Just being able to know who's in what function, especially when it comes down to fire drills, and having a good relationship with everyone is a huge plus, because just last week I had to go through something similar. One of our VIP customers needed an answer like next day, but the solution to that problem required different people from different functions. So for example, I had to work with someone in supply chain, manufacturing, product security, and then I had to bring everyone together actually. So we had like a 2-hour meeting on how to solve this for the customer. So it's pretty spur of the moment, but no one looks at you bad, or you have a good relationship with everyone and they're willing to help. So that's pretty important.
Great, thank you so much. Jasmine, you're next. Tell me more about your skills and abilities.
Yeah, I think adding on to what everyone else has already said, turning analytics into business insights is really important for my roles as well, not just here at Scripps Research, but in the past. I think particularly, it sounds like a lot of us are within the marketing functions or sales and marketing, and something interesting that I've learned over the years is everyone wants to be included in the marketing conversations from different departments, different leaders. They have a vested interest. I think because it drives a lot of the main goals of the organizations, but also because it's more open for entry. You know, like with an engineer, you need to go to school for 4 years to be able to even have a conversation about most of the code that they're working on. Whereas with marketing, there's a lot of thought-provoking articles out in the world, but being able to really express your expertise based off of data, but not just showing a data dump, rather kind of turning it into business insights has been really critical. And then, yeah, the networking piece is huge, but I think it's interesting as MBAs, we call it networking, but we were just talking before this started. I think the best networking has happened when you're just being nice and having a regular conversation with someone. So not networking for just networking's sake, but being a kind person at work, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I think another way to say it too is that you're interested in genuinely building a relationship, either professional or social, with somebody else. It's not just like a transactional goal when you mean like, oh, just to network, right?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's well put. Daniel, how about for you? Tell us more about the abilities and skills that you use.
Yeah, definitely. And just to build on that, I've definitely met with a lot of people, students who, you know, all they want is a job kind of thing of like, get me this job. And then there's a difference between that person versus would I actually want to work with that individual. And if you're looking to get something out of it, then it's the other person on the other side knows it quickly. So that's something that I try to do. And I talked to Jasmine and Justin. I talked to Justin a bunch during the program, and just to kind of explore. And I wasn't asking for a job, or I followed him to where he was, where he left, and I'm a BD now. And you never know next steps. But again, it's a small Rady community here. I think all the panelists gave a really good understanding of, if you can take a complex problem and simplify it like very clearly to anyone and really explain the why behind it, that is my job like every day, is to, like, the expectations are to know the customer, to know the market, to know what we need to do to play in the market and to win. But if you can actually take that to then the next level into, we have all this information, all this data, but this is why we're going down this route, and this is the financial impact, potential financial impact, that's huge. So that's something that I use at Rady and use every day. It's, you're bringing, especially in product management, you're bringing together people who don't report to you, cross-functional teams, who they're all incentivized in their own ways. And I like how Justin just said he was dealing with a firefight customer escalation. That's probably every week or two, which you probably dealt with at BD too. If there's always some issue, and then we have to, as a product management team, bring the parts together, because we can't solve it ourselves. We can only help facilitate the conversation. So if you can take the background of the why we're doing this, it's all for the customer, all for the patient, and this is why we need someone from supply chain, quality, cybersecurity, whoever that may be, to stop everything they're doing and focus on us and on you. That's a huge skill, and a lot of that's going to be to influencing without authority, and a lot of it's just, does that person trust you, and how do you gain trust with someone who doesn't, who you don't see on a daily basis. And I feel like that's all through genuine interaction.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. The next question I have is about trends. What trends are currently impacting your business, and how are your companies responding to those trends, and where do you see your business going in the next 5 to 10 years? And if you want to talk about COVID as well, about how COVID has impacted your business, feel free to do so. And I would like Justin to start us off.
Yeah, that's a good topic, because what's impacted Illumina the most is currently right now the pandemic. So So start out early or late 2019 or early 2020. One of the first like SARS-CoV-2 viruses were sequenced on Illumina sequencer. So with that information, it was kind of like spread all over the world. So piggybacking off of that, we actually had positive growth due to that. So the numbers that we've seen in 2020 far exceeded what we saw in the previous years, which is pretty interesting. And it's due to placements of our sequencing systems in public labs, government, CDC, et cetera, to help sequence the COVID-19 virus. So you'll see it in places like if you're going off an airplane, someone might swab your stuff just to see if you're carrying anything foreign. So that can be sequenced. And then we developed some COVID-seq protocols, so which is used in public health labs. And so we sequence anything from sewers, subways, and everything to see how the virus is trending and if it's anywhere it shouldn't be. So it's basically a huge COVID surveillance network that's spread worldwide right now. So each region like EMEA, APJ, Greater China, and everyone like that, and even in the US, Canada, Brazil, all starting their own COVID surveillance network using Illumina sequencers. So it's been a pretty big and busy year for us in terms of that. So we kind of had to pivot our business in a way to kind of support the customers that need this, and so much in a way where our supply chain is bogged down because we weren't expecting this kind of demand and COVID being a driver, because we were thinking the business would go the opposite way because of all the universities and everything closing, but it actually went the opposite way. So it's actually pretty decent right now.
Oh, it's amazing. I didn't know that Illumina was kind of at the forefront of sequencing the virus. That's really amazing. That's cool. Coffey, what about for you? Let's talk about trends with your company. How has COVID impacted your business? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I'll probably start with COVID first. So our main product is transcatheter heart valves to help the people who have cardiovascular diseases. So with that being said, we actually need to access to hospitals, physicians, clinicians to be able to perform that kind of surgery. But because of COVID, a lot of the non-essential surgeries got postponed. So that was one of the reasons that impact our sales. Another reason is that we're actually heavily depending on our third-party suppliers or logistic partners. So if, for example, right, during COVID, earlier this year, we actually had battery delay issues because the supplier was not able to supply us with the battery we need. So we have to delay some of the shipments. So those are just some of the examples because we're heavily depending on the third parties. And then if some of their business got disrupted, and then our business got disrupted, or we're not able to no longer satisfy the customer requirement anymore. So that's basically, yeah, a summary for COVID. So looking into the trends going forward, one of the trends that's really happening right now in the medical device industry is, I would say, probably device connectivity. So essentially, this drives another stream of revenue for a lot of the medical device companies because essentially, when you look at, previously we have software as service. Now we call it software as a medical device, in the way that you're able to connect the data, obtain the data from different devices. And then especially for people who have chronic diseases, a lot of their health need consistent monitoring systems. They're able to obtain that data and then pass that data to their healthcare professionals or their physicians. So that's a huge trend. So how does the trend currently impacting our business is that, so in my current business unit, critical care, we actually manufacture hemodynamic monitoring systems, especially we use it for intense care units or ICUs for critical care patients. And then on the dashboard, they display different metrics and try to detect the different patients' fluid systems or blood pressure to really inform the physicians or inform the clinicians if there are any problems earlier on. So we were able to actually develop our first ever predictive algorithms. It's called the Acumen Hypertension Index. So this recently got approved, be able to detect early on if someone has low blood pressure, and then be able to inform the physicians of that problem. And it really helps to enhance the surgical recovery after the patient has surgeries. So that's definitely one of the trends we're happening right now. And then we're going to continue developing this trends and then incorporate more machine learning tools or artificial intelligence into our monitoring platforms so we can make our patients recover sooner and have a better quality of life than just normal surgery.
Wow, thank you for that. That's amazing. Daniel, how about for you? What trends are on the horizon for BD?
Yeah, so we're consistently seeing just consolidation of big health networks continuing to buy other hospitals up. So when you do that, there's all these disparate technologies that are being used for like medication management that may not be a BD product, as an example. So how do we continue to standardize across these big health systems is a big trend that within medical device in general. I'm sure Edwards and Illumina and all these Scripps and every other company is looking at how do we create a good, like, one for the patient, but how do we connect everything within those health systems, because these are 30, 50 hospitals across multiple states, and they all need they all need their medication managed one way or another in a standard way. So that's something that we're really seeing. One thing just interesting during COVID, so BD, just as a high level, you could think of it as like a fancy cabinet to dispense medication, and it's all for the nurse. So during COVID, there's all these additional sites that were built off to accommodate COVID patients one way or another. So upon that site, they're not just going to lay out medication on a table. So there's actually a huge spike in demand early on during COVID to meet the needs of the providers in these off-site areas. So BD was consistently trying to deliver that demand during the heart of COVID. And then, as you heard Coffey was saying, in general, with any product, any company, there's supply chain challenges. So every day it's something new, some other shipment didn't come in. So it's how do we mitigate and continue to ship our products? So there's a huge team at BD today just focused on not ever running out of product to ship type of thing. And there's a lot of deviations and ways to do that. So that's a big trend, and I'm sure we'll consistently see that. Hopefully not forever, but for the foreseeable future, there'll continue to be supply chain challenges. Nothing that can't be mitigated, hopefully. But even these large corporations are struggling. So I couldn't even imagine smaller companies, because I'm sure we can leverage just the economies of scale where other companies can't. So those are kind of the big ones. One other thing that was interesting, because I was at NuVasive during COVID start, and it's all what Coffey was saying. It's NuVasive makes their money in the operating room. And if they start canceling elective procedures, which most of spine surgery is, that means no revenues coming in. So we were also part of like a COVID-19 task force to try to forecast out what it will look like, which was very not accurate to say the least. But it was a huge impact, at least at the beginning. But then surgeons want to make their money again, and there's a ramp up and spiked, a lot of elective surgeries in a short amount of time. So I think in the end, it'll probably net neutral, but there's obviously dips depending on what industry and, what part of the hospital that these companies are a part of.
Wow, yeah, I do. I think there's supply chain problems worldwide right now, but then also, guys, as students, that presents a giant opportunity for those of you who have an interest in supply chain or logistics or operations to pounce, because there's going to be a lot of hiring. They're going to pour more resources and manpower into solving these problems and to get products on time to places. So that's just something to think about. And then Jasmine, how about for you? Trends, what's going on?
Yeah, so Scripps Research, the organization that I work for, it's actually been named a few years ago in a few different publications the world's most influential what is it? They're like research institution, science institution, something crazy. So we have a ton of PhDs, MD PhDs coming out with tons of trends, following innovative kind of new research tactics that I probably would not be the best person to summarize. I know for certain the leader of our org, Dr. Eric Topol, he was leading the charge on a lot of COVID research and decisions, not just at the San Diego city level, but nationwide. He was published in CNN and a bunch of different places. So there are for sure trends that a lot of the scientists at Scripps Research know about, but maybe I could share more. So I think that's a bit more closer to home and being within the marketing function of an organization like that. The program that we work for is in partnership. It's from the NIH. It's funded by the NIH. So the counterparts that we work with are at the NIH, and our consortium members are for-profit, nonprofit organizations that everyone has heard of. There's many people involved in this program. It was started 4 years ago, and it's from actually President Obama had enacted a law that kind of spurred off our research program, and Dr. Francis Collins from the NIH is the head of this effort. So 4 years ago, everyone didn't know that there was something like a COVID pandemic that could happen. Everyone wasn't aware of how diversity in research would matter, because the outcomes from that research should impact real people. And COVID has really changed the landscape for that. But I was fortunate enough to work for a company who had already made these kind of big pillars of the world that we're in now, something that they wanted to focus on. So what I think is really interesting is our main kind of task is to make sure that people who participate in research programs are reflective of the United States, so that the outcomes and breakthroughs can actually benefit people who live here. Right before, in clinical trials of the past, people who are participants had to live near a medical institution or a really big school, which that in and of itself means you have to be somewhat wealthy. Typically, participants of research have been wealthy, old, straight, white men. And that's great, but then that means the outcomes of that specific research really benefits that one participant profile. But if we can build up the diversity in our research, we can kind of spread the breakthroughs across the real people who live here, including former participants as well. So what's been interesting is that our partners who have been partners with us from the very beginning have been able now to say, now that there's kind of a spotlight on health equity and the world is kind of looking at our country and the organizations that are leaders in our country to make impactful changes, those organizations are now able to say, we've been partners with the All of Us research program for over 4 years, not just because it's something that's become mainstream. And then some of our newer partners from the marketing arms, it's pretty important in order to be aware of the campaigns that you're running and understanding who you're trying to target, what message you're saying, down to kind of the reading level. Who are you trying to reach? Does it really depict what you're trying to get across? And I think it's incredible what's happening from a marketing's perspective, a marketer's perspective, because it's surely changed. And particularly with research, you wanted to just get a specific number of participants and you might not have cared who they were. But with this particular group, which are another one of our leaders is actually a Rady alum. So it's incredible that we're able to say that we do care about what the participant looks like and what the pool of participation is in research, because it'll really make a big impact.
That's awesome. Like also coming from the higher education industry, diversity is always a huge issue, making sure that things are equitable and that, you know, we're bringing as many different groups into the university as possible, because like you said, not everybody is an old white man. And so, you know, it's important to get different perspectives, and that's in higher education, that's in research, that's in kind of whatever industry that you work in. Diversity is strength. So I just love that Scripps is so aware of that, and that they are trying to, you know, find ways to increase diversity in the work that they do. So that's amazing. And guys, we are at the 30-minute mark. So, I mean, I definitely have more questions I can ask the panelists, but I want to give you guys, the students, an opportunity to ask a question. So hopefully you've been thinking about a question or questions that you would like to ask. And I just want to know who wants to be brave and go first.
I can jump in here.
Absolutely. Jump away. Who is this?
Will do. This is Dylan. My name's Dylan.
Hi, Dylan. Hi,
Hi.
ask your question.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, thank you all so much for the wonderful presentation. Very insightful, and loved hearing from all of you, and glad to hear that you've had success after your MBA or MSBA. I was curious if any of you guys have a technical background, whether academically or professionally, in life sciences. And if so, how has it played a role in the work you do? And if not, you know, how has that impacted how you can perform your role?
I can start with that one. So I actually worked at the Scripps Research Institute for a few years, like 4 years prior to Rady. So my background was molecular cell bio, went to undergrad for that. Really loved research and everything. I really wanted to find a way to actually commercialize research into the real world. And that was one of the main reasons I chose Rady, was to join a company after Rady who's actually taking research or taking concept through to commercialization. And that's what I love about product management in general. So I think every day, and my goal is to never lose the scientific aspect of it, because I love that stuff still to this day. So when I look at these problems that we're dealing with, it's all a hypothesis and problem one way or another. And if you look at it and kind of break it down into segments, for me, I did the same thing at Scripps that I do now, just more commercially focused. And I think it also is impactful when I work with a variety of people at BD who their background is all technical, all science, or all something else. And it's something where being able to understand enough, and you actually have more credibility in my mind if you can speak the talk one way or another, talk the talk. So I would say, you know, if anything, it's a benefit. Getting in is the hard part, but once you're in and you can prove that out, that's going to be the next step. The doors will be open.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Jasmine.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I don't have a technical background. I'm a marketer through and through. I was before Rady, and I still am after Rady. It is hard to get into the door without that sort of background. The way I did it was just through my connections at Rady, and that's how I was able to get in. But once I was in, it's been really incredible in that, you know, scientists are really great at being scientists, but there are insights from marketing that we can help kind of push whatever they're doing out into the world and help meet business goals. So it's been a really fun partnership, and I think we both learned from each other, which has been really exciting.
Anybody else want to answer that question? Because I've got another student waiting.
I also do not have any specifically life science and biotech or a medical device background. I do have a data background. That's how I break into this industry. From my perspective, you know, before I interview with Edwards, they have a lot of YouTube videos online about clinical education. I watched every single one of them that it's related to my business unit, critical care. Of course, I read all of their 10K and 10Qs report to make sure that I understand what they're primary focus on in terms of products, where their product are going, how the market share is going. So those are the things I felt like it's abundant. You can find a lot of information. Well, from my perspective, the things you are going to research in a short period of time is actually pretty impressive from an interviewer's perspective. But of course, during my first 3 months when I was in the company, I really have a steep learning curve in terms of products. But whenever there's a product training, because I work with the sales team, so I always just walk them and say, hey, I don't understand this. Can you just give me a quick, 10-minute walkthrough? They're willing to do that. So just, trust yourself. If you wanted to go into this industry, it's definitely possible.
Great, thank you. Saksham, you have your hand raised.
Hey, thank you, Janet. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having this opportunity to meet. It's been a really informational meet for everyone here. So my question was that, as graduate students right now, what can we do to enter and establish ourselves in the life sciences and healthcare analytics industry? It's a booming industry right now. I myself have around 5 years of experience in this industry, primarily working on incentive compensation and goal setting. So right now, in my time in college, what kind of technology should I learn? What kind of subject should I pick up? That will help me move further in this direction in life sciences and healthcare. Yeah, thank you. That's my question.
Is there any specific roles you wanted to get into? Because you mentioned that you're already in the industry, so you have an advantage compared to other people who may not have that industry experience. Are you
maybe in terms of analytics, like what kind of subject should I pick up, or technology should I know, which will further enable me to work in this industry?
Right. So if you wanted to go into a data profession in the industry, there are, I'm not sure what technical perspective are we talking about, but definitely I think there are 2 things I would encourage you to do. The first is that if I come into Rady without any programming experience, but after 1 year of extensive MSBA program, I was able to confidently walk out of the door and say I can code. I think that's something that really prepared me to do that. I'm not sure which program you're at, but if you are not currently in the MSBA program, if you wanted to go into data, there are really abundant information online. Coursera, Udemy, DataCamp, any other resources, a lot of the things, I know that DataCamp, you can actually get free DataCamp courses versus paying $300 to get a subscription. So you can get free resources while you're at school. The second, I would encourage you to just start any project. Start a small project, but something that you're interested. For example, the very first project I started was about food, because I'm a foodie. So I just log into Kaggle, download some of the data on Kaggle about food, and doing some analysis using R and Python. So start small, start something, but start today.
No, that's excellent. Does anybody else want to add to Coffey's answer about working in analytics?
Yeah, I think if you can show what the outcome of collecting this information is huge. So anyone can collect data. I don't know how to do it great, but I work with someone closely and we work together on this is what we're trying to answer, and then how I work with them of how do we actually solve that. So if you can prove and have clear examples in the interview of I took X amount of data points, like the goal is to make a decision on whatever. I use data that I've created, market insights, whatever it may be, and that was what established it. I think Justin, like we use Tableau a lot too. And that's something where, Tableau, you're expected to know Excel like perfectly and everything. Tableau and other data analytic programs, all those do is just help consolidate stuff to make it clear to digest. So at least from my marketing product management role, that's what I rely on, is to clearly digest complex information with data. And those are hard. It's hard to find good data people in general and data scientists, because a lot of people just want to, they don't necessarily want to know what you're trying to solve. I just go to someone and they just provide something, but that's not really the goal.
Other questions? This is your chance. That's fine. I've got another question I would like to ask. Talk more about your time here at Rady. specifically, what did you find was most useful to you as you started your career after you graduated? Classes, activities, clubs, services, events that you attended. Tell me more about your Rady experience and how you leveraged it. Justin, let's start with you.
I'd say the people and the professors, and although it might sound cliche, but I'll explain, like when talking with the cohort and other people, like the friends you make or the professors, you kind of ask them about like what they're interested in and what they're doing. So everyone kind of has their own background. I was in the flex evening, so everyone already had kind of, you know, they were already working. So it was kind of nice to learn about, you know, what everyone's doing for their occupation. And then when you dive deeper, you kind of see like the thought process of how they like provide solutions and everything. Same with professors. So you bring up a topic, any topic, and you just talk through it, whether it's with your professors or with your cohort. But it actually gave me a different lens on how I look at problem solving. So that was like my biggest takeaway from Rady was that like I used to like to look at things in the short term. But now I look at it from short term, long term, and even further than that and see like how things can be affected like way down the road. So that's actually helped me pretty often in my career, because like when we're having meetings about planning or anything like that, you know, a lot of the questions are pretty short term, but then you have one person ask about the long term question that generally no one really covers yet, but it becomes a good answer because it's something you need to look into. But that's what I enjoyed most about Rady, being able to look at kind of intake all the experiences from everyone and just seeing how everyone solve their own issues. And then you kind of have your own unique lens on how you problem solve yourself. So, but as a product manager, and everyone can attest to, like, that's one of like our day-to-day activities is problem solving, and how do you involve everyone in that? So that's the kind of the mindset I've adapted after being at Rady.
Excellent. Jasmine, how about for you?
Yeah, I've kind of exactly what Justin said, really. I've had 3 jobs at 3 different companies since I graduated Rady, and all of them were just solidified because of someone who is a Rady alum. And the people who got me my first interview, or however they helped, I'm sure they did a lot more than just that, but they were people who I just, like I mentioned earlier, first started a conversation with, not trying to get anything from them, just genuinely wanting to learn about who they were as a person. And so I think just making those genuine connections, and of course being focused on what you want to do in your career and getting your next step the way you want it to be is important. But I, particularly being in San Diego and working in San Diego, it's such a surprisingly small town for it being populated with so many people. Everywhere I've looked to apply, there's always been at least one Rady alum, and you hope that that one Rady alum is someone that you just happened to strike up a conversation with in the past, so that it's not, like Daniel mentioned, so transactional when you do reach out to them for help or support. So I'd say that portion was really critical. And also, while you're there, particularly if you're someone like me who's going into an industry that you didn't go to school for beforehand, I think getting used to failure is pretty important. Anyone who's probably in an MBA program, is you guys are high achievers. You've always been used to succeeding. And then you start your first kind of class and you're in a room full of experts in their own industries. You know, I think some of my colleagues in my cohort were people who helped build the bullet train in Japan. Like, that was just something so intimidating to me when I'd have to work with them on R coding, and then it was my first time coding. So I was really intimidated, but I think being comfortable with being uncomfortable was really helpful, and you're in a really supportive environment. So that's a nice place to do it, because once you get into the business world, you're going to be around so many smart, brilliant people again, and you're going to have to be the one who can speak to your portion really well without being nervous of saying the wrong thing, or understanding it's okay to say you don't know.
Yeah, I love that honesty in your answer, Jasmine. And yes, you were just as smart and capable as everybody else in the cohort too. Don't sell yourself short. All right?
Thanks. Yeah.
And Coffey, you are our lone MSBA graduate. Tell us more about how you leveraged your experience in that program.
Yeah, I had a really positive story to tell, which it started from a capstone project in my last quarter. It converted into an official offer. Not this offer, but it's in the a offer. So in my last quarter, we have a team of 4 helping PECO. We did a analysis. We actually used Python to produce a reproducible model to forecast inbound and outbound units for their distribution centers. So I volunteered to be the team lead. I was the point of contact. I was the one chaired the kickoff meetings. Of course, I'm also doing the technical work as well. I guess that they really see my ability to communicate well and also do the technical work. So the senior manager and manager called me the other day after we conclude with the project and say, do you want to come work for us? And then the second week I had an interview with them, it went really well. And then the week after I got the final offer from PECO. So that was a really successful story from a job perspective. And I really appreciate that I was able to have this opportunity to start with. And that the sponsors are really nice to work with. And I appreciate even, the program to actually place me on this in this company as our sponsor too.
Fantastic. And Daniel, how about for you?
I think I had a bit too much free time on my hands already, so I just leveraged all the resources that I could do. So like example, Jeanette and I would meet like at one point like weekly for me just to continue to pitch my just formalize my pitch for different job interviews. And something that I thought was like at least that helped me a lot was I would go to as many events as I can just to meet people and just to learn like what are people doing, why are they doing it, what do they like about it. And then I went to the Bay Area Trek, and that's where I actually solidified my internship at a company in the Bay Area, Varian Medical Systems. And that was a fun, good summer to apply what we're learning in school into the real world aspect. And I also just used the resources that we had at Rady. So one professor, as Justin and Jasmine said, if your professors are extremely smart, they're always thinking about the students first and their research, and a lot of them have a lot of background and are in industries that you would want to be in one way or another. So establishing relationships, continuing to follow up even after graduation with certain professors that you got along with has been very beneficial for me. And I think it's just something where you're only there for 2 years, it's going to fly by, or 2 or 3 years, depending on what program, it's going to fly by. So maximize that time there. And if you find yourself, not maximizing it, go, there's other resources in San Diego to help for connecting with people to learn more. So I would just say leverage what's in front of you today, because when you're gone, it's not always in front of you.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of there's a few other people from my cohort who still live here. And so we were just texting the other day and said we really miss just hearing the professors talk about current events. It's like in a way that you just can't get from newspapers or the things that the professors would just start class with just by happenstance and passing was like something we missed so badly. So we were saying, like, should we email our professors and just ask them to like talk to us? Is that weird? Like, what do we try to talk to them about? But yeah, that missed that for sure.
I do think you are allowed to audit a class. I'm not sure how many times you can, but I think if you ever just really jones into your professor, you could probably sign up and audit one of their classes.
I've audited 3 classes so far. I think it's unlimited. I just did one actually. And it was really, really good.
Well, yeah, way to take advantage of the resource. And yeah, that'll be something that you guys will have available to you after you graduate and you become alumni. So that's great. And also, Daniel, I think you are the first alum who has ever said that you had too much free time while you were a student in the program. It is usually the opposite problem that students have, where they are just super overloaded and they feel like they're drowning in academics all the time. So good for you, and good for you for using the time wisely.
Full time. If I was working full time, like Jasmine, are you full time or part time?
I was a full-time MBA, yeah.
If you're I'm picturing, and I have colleagues who are working full time, that and going to school full time is a whole nother game changer. I think full time, there's a lot of time within one day.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
That's great. Okay, any other last questions from students before we wrap up? This is your chance. Okay, guys, so if students wanted to maybe talk more one-on-one with you or do an informational interview.
I'd ask one question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sure.
Panelists, alumni, thanks for your time. And would you mind if we reached out to you?
Oh, Patrick, we just lost you. Actually, Patrick, I think you were literally just about to ask what I was about to volley up, is how can students get in touch with you guys? What's a good way to connect? Patrick, is that what you were going to ask? He's walking right now.
Yes, I apologize. Yes, that's what I was going to ask.
That's totally,
Thanks.
that's a great question. Great minds think alike, right? So yeah, what's a great way for students to connect with you if they want to continue having a conversation? You think, is LinkedIn the best way to do it?
I do LinkedIn. Yeah, that's a good way.
Maybe can you guys, if you don't mind, can you get your LinkedIn URLs and just paste them into the conversation?
Sure.
That way students can find you. And then students, before you all scatter and disappear on me, I would really love it if you would take a poll and let us know what you thought of tonight's event, how useful you thought it was. Of course, your answers are anonymous, so I will not know who rated what. I'm going to launch the poll now.